start off with the early signs. So signs before diagnosis that signal to someone that something might be going on. And I wanted to include these because you'll notice as we move through to moderate and advanced stages, many of the symptoms that you see before diagnosis and in the mild early stages, these symptoms will persist and progress as time goes on. So first, here's subtle memory loss. So they might be asking repeated questions, maybe losing things and not being able to find them, but this memory loss is subtle. It doesn't impact their daily functioning yet. Similar to this, confusion. They may seem confused in what should be familiar environments to them. Their judgment may seem a little bit off. They may seem a bit disoriented at times. And they may also start to have difficulty finding words. But again, it's not significantly impacting their communication at this point. So for those of you who are here who are seeing these signs and haven't necessarily spoken to a doctor or gotten a diagnosis yet, I strongly suggest that you do. Getting a proper diagnosis can help you understand what's really going on. It can rule out other possible causes, and it also helps you get the right help and support. The earlier, the better. For those of you who already have a diagnosis and may be thinking as I go through this slide, oh, I missed so many of the early signs, or it took me so long to realize something wasn't right. I just want to say you are not alone in those feelings at all. These signs are very hard to spot. Even doctors have a very hard time diagnosing dementia. So it's much easier to look back and think, oh, I should have seen that. Please don't be hard on yourself in that way. Don't carry any guilt in that way if you didn't catch the early signs, because you're absolutely not alone. All right, let's move on to mild or early stage dementia. So here, as I said, symptoms from before persist and progress. So we're going to see increased memory loss. They may start to lose things more often or have difficulty remembering new information specifically. So maybe what they just read, maybe they're having to read it over and over again, what they ate for breakfast, the name of a new person they met. This can also cause them to ask repeated questions or tell the same story within a short amount of time without realizing. So that's something you might see as well. They may have difficulty with more complex everyday tasks. So maybe following a recipe, managing bills is a big one that people tend to notice in this stage. Driving to a new location might be difficult. Part of this is that they start to have trouble planning and organizing. And on top of this, they may also get distracted. They may lose focus more quickly because they don't have the ability to maintain their focus anymore. So that's something you might see. Changes in mood is another symptom. More intense or more frequent mood swings than they usually have. Maybe some paranoia, so they're feeling paranoid about things, anxious. Anger is a big one. And withdrawal is a big one as well, either from you or from social activities. They just don't want to do things anymore that they used to enjoy doing. And last, changes in judgment. So they may do things that they wouldn't do before, like dressing for summer when it's freezing outside, or falling for those phone scams that go around, letting a stranger into the house, things like that, things that take judgment and they no longer have that ability, or their ability is starting to decline a little bit. We have moderate and mid-stage dementia. So some persisting symptoms, some new. Again, further increased memory loss, maybe not remembering personal history now or names of family members. Increased confusion and disorientation is common, especially disorientation of time and place. That comes before disorientation of people or their person. So they may get lost in familiar places. They may forget what day of the week it is at this stage. They may also have increased communication difficulties, and we're going to talk a lot about communication strategies when we get to our tips. This might be difficulty speaking or expressing, as well as difficulty understanding what's being said to them. Of course, both make communication very difficult. They may start to have difficulty with now the simpler daily tasks. So getting dressed, bathing or showering, going to the bathroom. Incontinence can start in this stage as well. And last here is behavior changes. So pacing, repetitive activities like closing and opening the curtains, or depending on the type of dementia, they may even get delusions or hallucinations. So delusions being false beliefs, believing things that aren't true, and hallucinations either seeing things that aren't there or hearing things that aren't there, for example. And lastly, advanced or late stage dementia. So we'll see here some severe memory loss. They may not be able to recognize people at this point or remember significant details of the past. Very limited communication. They may not talk much or at all. They may not make sense when they're talking. Physical challenges, might start to see these. They may lose the ability to walk or stand. They will likely completely rely on others for daily tasks, again, like going to the bathroom or personal care. And last, loss of awareness of their surroundings, and because of this, not really responding to their environment the way that they used to. Now, I know talking about the stages and the symptoms, especially when we get to this late stage, can be disheartening. It can be a little scary. I think it's important to remember to take it one day at a time. While we want to be prepared and we want to know what to expect, at least a little bit, we also want to try to stay in the present, try to focus on what we can control. I mean, just by being here at this webinar, you're showing how much you care and, your willingness to learn. And this commitment to learning will make a real impact on how you navigate this journey and the care that you give them. So with that, let's move on to our top tips. But first, I haven't heard from you in a while. A question. What symptom of dementia has been the hardest for you to manage lately? And I put lately because I know that it really depends on the day. Maybe depends on the hour sometimes. Hallucinations, agitation, medication management. So forgetting a few days, yeah. Depression, erratic behavior, waking up all night. Argumentative behavior, yes. I was going to say our communication tips are going to really help with that. Behavior and judgment. Repetitive questions for hours on the loop, yes, yes. Incontinence. Memory, communication, loss of words, communication, not sleeping. Right, so a wide variety of answers. There are so many symptoms that can make caring for someone with dementia very challenging, which is exactly why the majority of the webinar, the rest of the webinar is dedicated to these top 11 tips. Now, keep in mind that we're only touching on a few. So the ones that I think are the most important for this Dementia 101 kind of intro webinar. I did do another webinar last October that dove into managing specific behavior changes, and the recordings on our website. This is what it looks like if you want to go watch it. And I'm doing a webinar specifically for Lewy body dementia in 2 weeks. If you guys want to register for that, that's what this looks like. But for today, we're going to focus on some of the most helpful general tips. So the first 4 are related to managing daily activities. And I know you guys have probably heard some of these things before, but I like to talk about it in a more practical way, in a way that maybe you haven't thought of it yet, hopefully. So tip number 1 is give them routine and structure while staying flexible. So establishing a routine is arguably, in my opinion, one of the most helpful things you can do for someone with dementia. It helps give them a sense of comfort, a sense of security, and a sense of order. By creating a predictable pattern for daily activities, brushing, bathing, eating, toileting, they know what to expect. And this decreases their anxiety and agitation and helps them cope with the day better. And on top of all that, it also helps them maintain their independence with these tasks for longer, which is going to tie into our next tip. Routines are not only beneficial for them, they also help us as caregivers because it can help the day go by more smoothly. So trying to have meals around the same time each day, trying to have a designated day or time for showers. This is a difficult one. I know we're going to touch on it a few times. A designated time for TV even. I think it's important to remember that their awareness of time is lost as the dementia progresses. They don't have the same awareness of time that we have. So routine helps to give them a sense of structure that they no longer get from time, right? And this helps them to feel less confused about what time it is and what they're supposed to be doing. Again, lowering anxiety and agitation. If we put ourselves in their shoes, if we were in a room with no clock, no light, we had no idea what time it was, that would be very unsettling, right? So routine can give them that structure that they don't get from time anymore. Something else to remember in this is that people with dementia usually hold on to long-term memory longer than they do short-term memory. And I remember I learned, I think it was in university, that long-term, maybe this is common sense, but I found it interesting that routines are a part of our long-term memory. So they remember their routines. So trying to keep their routine as similar as you can to what they used to do before they were diagnosed. You know, if they always showered at night instead of in the morning, maybe it'll go smoother if you stick to that. Or if they always got dressed and then brushed their teeth, trying to keep that the same. If they always sat in the same spot at dinner, keeping that the same. These seemingly small things can actually make a really big difference for them. Now, I can't talk about routine and not talk about a toileting routine, especially as dementia progresses. They may lose the ability to know when they need to go to the bathroom. So suggesting or guiding them to the bathroom in a routine-like fashion can be helpful. You can do it every 2 hours. That could be a good routine. Another one that people use is when they wake up at any mealtime and before bed, they will guide them to the bathroom. Kind of whatever works best for them and works best for you. A toileting routine can be super helpful. All of this being said, we can't expect every day to go as planned. You know, if you think about the last day that went completely as planned, I don't know if that even exists. This is where flexibility comes in, right? Dementia can be, it is so unpredictable. Their moods are unpredictable, their behaviors. Sometimes they even have sudden changes in their abilities. All of this is unpredictable. I think the key to creating routine is constant assessment and adaptation. So assessing their condition, assessing their abilities, their mood at that time, and then adapting their routine and adapting your care to that. I have on the screen here, we bend so they don't break. We meet them where they are that day, that hour, that minute, right? So that's tip number 1, flexible routines. Easier said than done, but we can try our best. Okay, tip number 2 is preserving their independence as much as you can. A sense of independence not only improves their self-esteem, but it also preserves their dignity and their confidence. It makes them feel needed. It gives them purpose. And I think I mentioned this, it also helps them to maintain their ability to do certain tasks for longer. It's important for us as caregivers to try to balance support with respect for their independence. How do we do this? This is hard. I have 3 suggestions. So 1, I know it can be so tempting to take over a task when they're struggling, but we want to the best of our ability, try to allow them to do it as much as possible, even if it means they take longer, if they struggle a little bit, you know, we can work alongside them. We can offer help in a way that maintains their involvement and maintains their sense of control. Even if they only help with part of the task, they can still feel like they accomplished something. And that is so, so important to them. You can also simplify tasks by breaking them into smaller, more manageable steps. For example, getting dressed. You can arrange their clothes in the sequence that they should be worn on the bed. So shirt, underwear, pants, socks, shoes. You can also hand over each item individually, but still let them put it on. Both can help make dressing easier, but it still allows them to feel like they dress themselves. Or instead of asking them to help you clean, that's a very general word, right? We can start by asking for help sweeping. You know, smaller tasks are easier for them to comprehend, which makes it easier for them to be independent. And of course, this will all depend on what stage they're at, what their abilities are at that time, but just kind of, you know, seeing what we can do to try and give them that sense of independence and that sense of purpose. Along with this, communicate what they need to do very simply and clearly with little explanation. We're going to talk about that soon when we talk about communication strategies. But especially once the dementia is more progressed, even demonstration can be even more helpful than communicating it verbally. It can be more successful. For example, demonstrating brushing your teeth rather than just telling them to, you can show them how. Also, physically guiding them can be a good method as well, doing hand over hand to help them brush their teeth. Again, all kind of depending on what stage they're at. So however you do it, whatever works best for you, just trying to preserve their independence is so helpful for them, not only mentally, but physically as well. So that is tip number 2. Okay, tip 3, lower your expectations. This is a huge one. It's very common for caregivers to have very high expectations of what they can achieve. You can put in the chat if you struggle with this. But when we have high and unrealistic expectations of ourselves, we set ourselves up for failure because we have these super high expectations and then we don't reach them and then we feel guilty and then we beat ourselves up because why didn't I achieve that, right? And I did this, and every single day I did this. And it really contributed to the burnout that I experienced because I always felt like I wasn't living up. On the other hand, when we set expectations for the person we care for about what they should be able to do, this sets you both up for frustration. So we need to adapt our expectations to our new normal. New normal, new expectations. This applies to our expectations of ourselves, of the person we're caring for, and of the situation as a whole. So first of all, you won't have nearly as much time or energy as you did before you were a caregiver. We need to adapt our expectations of ourselves. Second, as dementia progresses, the person's abilities and behaviors change, which means we have to adjust our expectations of them. You know, they likely had responsibilities that they're unable to do anymore. They might be asking repeated questions because they just don't remember your answer from even a minute ago. We need to learn to accept that we can't have the same expectations of them that we once had. And lastly, a big one, lowering our expectations of our situation. You know, showering is a good example of this. Showering every day is a normal now, outside of caregiving, that quickly becomes not so normal. Many people with dementia are very against showering, very against bathing, and for some caregivers, this is a fight every single time. A lot of caregivers have a hard time accepting that in this new normal, showers might happen once a week. Showers might happen every 2 weeks. We need to accept that things won't look the same as they once did, and that is okay. The reason that we need to accept this is because when our expectations don't align with the reality that is dementia, we face frustration and we face disappointment. By adapting our expectation to the changing needs of the person we care for and our own changing capacity, our own changing abilities as well, we create a more peaceful environment for everyone. At the end of the day, we have so much less control than we think, than we want. You know, dementia is unpredictable, as I said, and no matter how much we plan or try to manage situations, we have less control over the outcome than we need and want to have. And this can be really difficult to accept, but it's a really important part of caregiving, understanding that we can't control every part of the person's behavior. We can't control the progression of the disease. Once we can understand that and accept that, we can focus on what we can control. We can control our reactions, our ability to adapt. We can learn as much as we possibly can. You know, those are things we can control. So tip number 3 is lower your expectations. I always go on a little bit of a rant when I talk about that because it's something that I did. It's something that affected me so much that, you know, I want you to do what I didn't do in that case. Now, in line with the last tip, tip number 4 is prioritizing their safety and their comfort. If you're ever doubting yourself, I want you to pause and stop and ask yourself, are they safe? Are they comfortable? If the answer is yes and yes, you're doing a great job. So let's first talk about prioritizing comfort. This often looks like letting go of those expectations and letting go of the control we were talking about. When we do this, we can focus on what really matters. And what really matters is them being comfortable, right? This means embracing imperfection. For example, maybe you let them help you fold laundry because you know they enjoy helping. The laundry is not folded perfectly, but you made them feel valued, made them feel important. You know, maybe you're worried that they're watching too much TV, but they're so content doing that. They're sitting and they're content and they're happy watching their favorite show. Maybe they, again, only shower every 2 weeks, but now they're not getting agitated every day when trying to convince them to shower every day. They're still clean and they're more comfortable. So when we focus on their comfort rather than striving for what we think should happen or what we think we should do or these perfectionistic standards, right? It makes things easier for everyone and for ourselves too, drastically easier. I also want to talk about safety. We always want to prioritize safety. A big part of this is creating a safe home environment. And we can do this in a lot of ways. I think my top tip for this is to get a occupational therapy assessment. You can ask your doctor for a referral. They visit your home and they give you tailored advice, tailored to your house and to the person you're caring for, to improve the safety and accessibility of your home, make it more comfortable and more safe for the person you're caring for. So that's, I think, my number one tip for that one. But there are also a lot of things you can do on your own as well in this big list I have on the screen. Eliminate tripping hazards, clearing clutter, securing loose rugs, improving lighting can reduce falls risks a lot as well. Grab bars in the bathroom next to the toilet or in the shower, non-slip mats in the bathroom, even the kitchen where it tends to get a little wet on the floor. You can use door alarms and locks, even child locks and doorknob covers to prevent wandering. A lot of people install home cameras so you can monitor them if you're in a different room or if you're not home. Locking away hazardous items, so medications, cleaning products, sharp objects, things like that. These are all adjustments in your home that you can make to keep them safe, and they're all relatively easy to install. Even having a doorknob cover on a door can save you so much worry, and it's, you just pop it on the doorknob. So there are easy things that we can do to make them as safe as possible. So remember, are they safe? Are they comfortable? You're doing a great job. That's tip number 4. Okay, moving on, mastering communication. The next 4 tips are related to this, and these may be my favorite of the bunch. There are some nuggets of gold in here, I promise you. But first, of course, a question for you, a quick yes or no answer. Have you been struggling to communicate with the person you're caring for? Is this something you have been struggling with? Oh, you guys are talking in the chat. That's amazing. And yes, a recording will be available. Thank you. Thank you for saying that. Wow, lots of yeses. 21 questions to get what she's trying to say. Yes. There's some yeses in caps lock as well. That's how I know you guys are serious. Not until the 100th repetition. Yes, that is so relatable. So, okay, I would say about 90%, 95% of the answers there are yes. And that's because it's hard. It is so hard to communicate with somebody who has dementia. But I have some really practical and useful tips you can try. Let's talk about it. So first, tip number 5 is using the 4 R's. Reassure, reconsider, redirect, and relax. So this is a strategy by, let me not forget his name, Andrew Budson and Maureen O'Connor. They wrote a book about managing Alzheimer's and dementia, and this technique was in that book, and I loved it so much, and I wanted to share it with you. It's an approach you can use in a wide variety of different and difficult situations. So first is reassurance, and this is a big one because when we really think about it, dementia must be a very scary experience. Everything's unfamiliar, everything's confusing. A lot of things that are regular everyday things to us, showering, crowds, loud noises, can be very scary to someone with dementia. They may not know where they are, what time it is. They may not know who any people around them are. And a lot of different behaviors and moods that they express. So maybe anger, yelling, pacing, repeated questions, asking to go home, are actually a manifestation of fear or anxiety. And because of this, giving them reassurance becomes a really important part of our role as their caregiver. When you're communicating with them, especially when their anxiety is high, simple phrases like, I'm here, I'm not going anywhere, you are safe, can provide a lot of reassurance and peace of mind for them. Here's an example I really want to share with you. It's so many caregivers struggle with their person saying, I want to go home. I want to go home when they are in fact home. And you can put in the chat if you struggle with this. This is a situation where reassurance is the answer. There's an interesting concept in dementia. It's called time shifting. I don't know if you guys have heard of that before, but time shifting is where a person with dementia believes they're in a different time in their lives. And in this example, their home that they're referring to may be their childhood home, maybe the home they lived in their early 20s. You know, no matter how many times we try to explain that this is their home, they're not going to believe it because their minds have never seen this home. They're back in their childhood home, right? So instead of saying you are home, that's not going to work. We can say you're safe. I'm here with you. Some people will say, oh, we're just going to stay here tonight. It's okay. You know, they don't mind, the people who own this house. And, you know, by tomorrow they likely forget. But this is a perfect example of how effective reassurance can be in a difficult situation, especially when we can get to the root of it and really understand why this is their behavior. If we know that it's fear and anxiety, and we know that they are living in a different time, we know that reassurance will be helpful. So that's a huge one, huge one. Next is reconsider. Reconsidering their perspective allows us to empathize with them. Again, imagine how scary certain things must be. Showering, for example. Imagine not understanding why you need to shower, not understanding why you need to get in the water, why you need to take off your clothes, you know, being overstimulated by the sound and the feel of the water. This is why so many people with dementia refuse to shower, because it's just a confusing and unsettling experience. And it's a good example of why we need to reconsider things from their perspective. I'll never forget a caregiver I was speaking with once who was caring for his wife who had dementia. He said, she can't live in my world anymore, so I need to live in her world. And you know, it was quite a while ago that he said that, but it just stuck with me because I think it's such a beautiful way to put it. The person with dementia is always right because that is their experience. And we need to try our best to live in their experience, live in their world. We need to try to hear them, try to understand them, try to learn from them, you know, learn about what they're experiencing and what they need. So I wanted to share that with you because it stuck with me. I think it's so true and it's such a beautiful way to put it. Next is redirect. Redirection can be very helpful, again, in a variety of situations. If the person you're caring for is scared, if something's upsetting them, if they're insisting that they're somewhere else, if they're fixating on something, if they're hallucinating, you know, I'm sure there are so many more. Trying to reason with them usually isn't successful, and we're going to talk about that in tip 7, I think. So sometimes the best thing you can do is redirect their focus to something else, to something they enjoy. Just distract them in any way. You know, you can ask them to tell you about a subject you know they love to talk about. You can ask for their help with a task, you know, sorting things, folding towels. You can take them to another room, or if they're able to, take them on a walk, you know, give them a change of scenery. You can do an activity with them that they enjoy, even if it's watching TV that they like. But distraction can be your best friend in a lot of situations. And last is relax. So another kind of interesting fact is that people with dementia often have a heightened sensitivity to the emotions of others. They can actually pick up on emotional and nonverbal cues and may mimic the emotions of those around them, which isn't always a great thing for us. So calm responses and body language can really help to keep them calm. I want to say this is a hard one. It can be very hard to stay calm when your patience is being tested, when you're exhausted, when you're stressed, probably all the above. All we can do with this one is try our best, but a calm environment and a calm presence can do wonders when communicating with them. So the 4 R's, that is tip number 5. Okay, tip 6, also courtesy of Andrew Budson, is the 3 principles of time. These are 3 pretty simple principles that can not only improve your communication, but can improve their